What is up, YouTube and the great people of the internet? It is your boy, ThunderBuddy29 here, back today with another video. And today, we're going to be doing a different kind of video. A video I have not done in about a year or so. And that is, we are going to be doing an updated tier list video. And we are going to be ranking all Fortnite seasons from worst to best. Now, before I get right into this video, I just want to say I hope you enjoy the content that you see here on the channel. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure you smash that like button down below, subscribe, share this with your friends, and hit that bell so you will never miss another video. And of course, join the channel today for as low as $2 a month. Get loyalty badges on the side of your name. You get custom exclusive emojis, priority reply to comments, and upgrade to an extra dollar a month, member shoutouts at the end of each video. Join today. Link will be in the description below. But anyways, we got a very long ranking video to get into. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? Alright folks, so as you can see on the screen here, I already started filling out this tier list, mainly because these opinions that I've had before really have not changed, mainly for the same reasons why I've said before. But throughout this video, some of my opinions actually did change, especially when we entered Chapter 2 and 3. So anyways, let's get right into this. So this is going to be a very long video, so grab yourself some popcorn, grab a snack, grab a Mountain Dew or something, and just sit back and relax as we now fill out the rest of the list. So let's go on to Chapter 1, Season 6. My opinion on that really has not changed much. I'm actually going to put that in C tier. Like, it was still a good season. I had a lot of fun with it, don't get me wrong. But I think this is where, like, the downfall of Fortnite really had started. Well, not really, though, because that's where Chapter 1, Season 7... I'm also going to put that in C as well. I'm actually going to put that above Chapter 1, Season 6, because I actually think it was more fun, because a lot more did happen during the season. Like, you had a really good winter event where you had the whole map get covered in snow. You had marshmallow. But the issue that I had with this season was how insanely sweaty it started to get. And that was mainly because of the introduction of creative, which eventually replaced playground. And a lot of people have argued and said that was where Fortnite's downfall really started, was when they put in creative. Because you have people sweating on there, cranking 90s, hours on end in creative mode. But a lot of good did happen during the season as well. I personally had a lot of fun with this season. So I'm putting in the C tier, but it's technically borderline B. But now let's go on to Chapter 1, Season 8. Now, in my opinion, this season was a lot more fun than I remembered. A lot did happen during the season, and I think I'm actually going to move that up to A tier. I'm actually going to put it right there, actually. Like, a lot did happen. Like, you had a lot of really fun limited time modes. Like, you had the Thanos event from Endgame. Even though that was a collab event, it was still fun, and it was a limited time mode that we have never seen again since. And that's the only time we ever will see that. You had Air Royale, which that was my favorite LTM of all time. You had a really good loot pull. You had buried treasure. The theme of this map and the locations of it, everything was just great. But I think where it really began to fall off was near the end of it, when the pump shotgun got replaced with the combat shotgun. That's where I think the season started to fall off, but it cannot be denied that I had so much fun with this season. Probably one of the most fun I've had with this game in a while at that point. Alright, now going on to Chapter 1, Season 9. I'm actually going to put that in D tier. And the reason why that was, the season overall really started to make the game boring. Like, not really that much happened during the season. But I think one of the reasons why I kept playing the game during that time, one of the reasons why I stuck around, was because you had fun limited time modes during that time as well. You had 14 Days of Summer. You had the introduction of Horde Rush. And that was probably the reason why I stuck around and kept playing the game, even when it started to not be that fun. And eventually the pump shotgun did come back. But speaking of shotguns, at one point during that season, you had 4 spam shotguns other than the TAC. You had 4 spam shotguns dominate the season, most notably the combat. I didn't have much fun with this season, but it wasn't the worst of all time. And now we go on to Season X, the final season of Chapter 1. I'm definitely going to keep that in F tier, but borderline D. And the reason why that was mainly because of the brutes. Like, I did not like the brutes that much. The brutes were really annoying as hell. But this was one of the times where Fortnite actually did care about its community. They still somewhat cared back then. And the reason why they did was because they took them out 3 weeks after. And then the season overall started to become a major sweat show. A lot of people were quitting the game, people were getting burnt out of it. And then you had a very fun Batman event get introduced on the final week of the season, which that was great. The Black Hole event, I did not like the Black Hole event. Well, I liked the event itself, but I did not like about the Black Hole that it was just that way for 2 days, but it was for no warning. I still personally think the season could have been better, but I think it was a great end to Chapter 1. So, with that being said, that completes Chapter 1 as we now go on to Chapter 2. Season 1 of Chapter 2, I should say. Now, I think this is probably the most fair and reasonable ranking that I'm going to give in this whole video that I think everybody can agree on. Chapter 2, Season 1, I'm putting that in C tier. This season honestly could have been an A tier, possibly a B tier. But the reason why it wasn't, well, the season overall, it was a big start to a new chapter. The Fortnite community was fired up, the most fired up they had been in a long time. But why did it fall off? Well, that was mainly because of the season's length. Like, it lasted from October of 2019 to February of 2020. It lasted almost 2 seasons. Like, if it would not have been that long, I think this season could have been a lot better. It would be a higher rank. But because of that, like, it had a good start. The season was fine. I didn't really have much of an issue with the season. It was mainly because it got boring. So I think it's fair to put it in C tier. Now, Chapter 2, Season 2. Speaking of this season, 4 years ago yesterday, this season came out. 4 years ago yesterday. In my opinion, this was probably one of the last fun seasons that we ever had until we got to Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 to a certain extent. And I think I'm going to put this in A tier. Now, I did talk some trash about the Battle Pass, like, right around the time that it came out. And that was probably one of my biggest regret videos that I've had. Because the season overall was fun. The theme of it was great. I loved the loot pool. I loved the helicopters. I loved the map and its locations. But the issue that I had was that all of the best weapons in the game were stored at those locations and they didn't really change much. And everyone would land at those locations and people would fight tooth and nail for it. That was probably the only issue I had with the season, but overall it was still very fun and very memorable. And I think the reason why people still talk about it to this day was that this season happened during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this was a season everyone had definitely played. Those were definitely fun times, I'm not going to lie. Now, going on to Chapter 2, Season 3. Unfortunately, I couldn't say the same for that. But I still think it deserves C tier in my opinion. And the reason why that is, now the season overall I didn't have much of an issue with. It was mainly because I was getting burnt out of it. Like, the first couple weeks of the season, half the map was put underwater. And then you had two major updates during that season that ended up getting delayed because of Black Lives Matter events. Now, this is where Fortnite really should not have gotten involved in politics or real life issues in any way. Like, if you wanted to do that, at least focus on your game first and not hold back major game updates Like what they did with the Cars update when they introduced driving cars. They delayed that because of a second Black Lives Matter event. Now, this is why politics should not be put in video games or should not be put above their own game. The game should have came first. Now, there were a few good moments then and there during the season. I did not like the charged shotgun, but I did like the one collab that they did with the Discovery Channel when the map was underwater, the shark event. I thought that was good. But other than that, I don't really remember much of it because I got really, really burnt out of it. But now let's go on to Chapter 2, Season 4. Now, this is a season I think I've been a little bit too harsh on. I originally put it in F tier, mainly because I've described the season as a cash grab because it was a 100% Marvel Battle Pass and Marvel themed season overall. But I still did not like the overpowered mythics that they did have. I mean, I get it, they're known for being overpowered, but they should not have been as overpowered as they were. I mean, imagine getting like 10 kills in solo, then you just get blasted away by an Iron Man's laser. I mean, I still think the Halloween event was trash. Even though the season was a cash grab, at least it wasn't as much of a cash grab like it would be in Chapter 4 and 5, or the seasons that came afterward. Even though this was a Marvel collab Battle Pass and theme season, even though it was somebody else's work and not theirs, they still made it work with the storyline. They still made a good storyline out of it. That cannot be denied. We've definitely seen worser seasons than this. And I think for that alone, I'm actually going to move it up to the back of the D tier instead of putting it in F tier. Now, moving on to Chapter 2, Season 5. Now, this is another Season 2 that I think I might have been a little too harsh on. I'm actually going to move that in the back of the B tier, borderline C. Nah, I'm actually going to put it in C. Now, I think the season had somewhat of a decent start. Like, you had some of the player base get fired up because you saw some OG OG map replicas all over the map. Like, you had Tomato Town, you had the pirate ship, and all that. But here was the big issue that I had with the season, was that the map wasn't as exciting as people thought it was. And of course, collabs went extremely out of control, which kind of proved my point that it was even more of a cash grab than the Marvel season was. But there would be a lot more times where Fortnite would become extremely greedy when it came to that. Now, the loophole I thought was okay. I thought it was decent. It could have been worse. But it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that good. Now, going on to Chapter 2, Season 6. Now, my opinion on that really has not changed much. I mean, the only thing I can really say that kind of somewhat changed was that it had somewhat of a decent storyline concept. Like, the theme of the season, the concept was good, but the execution of it was done very, very poorly. This was the first season that had no snipers in it. You had makeshift primal guns, which those guns were shit. The season was just not enjoyable, and the map too. The map was pretty much like they just replaced everything that was added in Chapter 2, Season 5. Like, the desert area got replaced with a bunch of orange crap. That was all there was to it. So that's going to stay in F tier. You can't convince me otherwise. Now, Chapter 2, Season 7. This was another mid-season that I have to say. This season was also mid. And I'm probably going to put this in the top middle of the C tier. Now, I thought the loophole of the season was good. Don't get me wrong, the loophole of the season was good. The issue that I had with it were the UFOs. People constantly camped in UFOs. The railgun was overpowered as shit. And of course, they were once again getting involved in real life events. And that's what Fortnite should not be doing. They should be focusing on the game and not that stuff. And of course, the season also had a shit ton of collabs as well. I mean, the season, overall I did like the theme of the season. I did like that, don't get me wrong. All right, so now let's go on to the final season of Chapter 2, and that is Chapter 2, Season 8. Now, I'm going to put this in the top of the D tier, but borderline C. This season was really not that enjoyable to me. The map didn't really change that much. The sideways weapon, the loophole was somewhat worse than it was the previous season. But there's only two things that this season had that were good, and that was it had the best Halloween event since 2018, and it had a really good finale event. But those were the only two really good things about this season. It did have a very good end to Chapter 2, though, I'm not going to lie. Alright, so now let's go on to Chapter 3, as that concludes Chapter 2. So now let's go to Season 1. Now, I think this is another mid-season as well. This season had a very, very good start, though, to a new chapter. Fortnite always has good starts to new chapters. That's the thing I've noticed. But the thing is, they just don't know how to keep the momentum of it. Like, I would say, like, maybe after, like, the first month of the season, it eventually started to get boring. I mean, the only major update you had during that season was Tilted Towers getting put back into the game for the first time since 2019. That was the only major update that came during the season, well, other than all the collabs that were put in. The only thing I really did not like about this season that it was mainly dominated by two weapons. The MK7 and Stinger SMG. That combo literally dominated the whole season. Every player was using that combo. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got very, very incredibly burnt out at this season. But overall, very good start to a new chapter. They just unfortunately did not know how to keep that momentum. But I can't really say the same about Chapter 3 Season 2, and I'm actually going to put that in B tier. I actually think, well, this season had a very rocky start. I ain't gonna lie. It did have a rocky start. I'm actually gonna put that right there. But then as time went on, the season got a lot better, and one of the reasons why it did was because we were seeing changes to this game that we had never ever seen before. We saw rocket launchers with guided missiles. We saw a zero builds game mode. Like those are things that Fortnite has never ever seen before. And I think another thing too, unfortunately about this season, this would be the last season that actually had a very good live event. A very good finale event, I should say, as well. Like, the Battle Pass was not that good, but the season overall was good. The only thing I didn't like about the season was the map that hardly changed. The map didn't really change. It only changed, like, they only added in, like, a fortress location and added a bunch of freaking airships in every location. That was it. Like, the map part was lazy, but the season overall was fun. It was enjoyable. And it was somewhat memorable. Alright, now let's go on to Chapter 3, Season 3. Unfortunately, this season did have a rocky start as well. The only strength that this season really did have was the map. The map did significantly change a lot compared to Chapter 3, Season 2. But unfortunately, the season turned out to be very, very boring. And this was arguably the most burnt out the Fortnite community had been in a very long time at that point, since Chapter 2, Season 6. But why was that? That was mainly because of lack of content. Another thing, too, I did not like what they did in Chapter 3 Season 2 was mess up the snipers. Well, the snipers were still dog shit for most of Chapter 3 Season 3 as well. The summer event was somewhat okay. Like, I thought the summer event was really bad at the time, but eventually we would see another summer event that would be a lot worse than that, which we're going to talk about later on. But unfortunately, this season wasn't as good as I thought it would be. But now let's go on to Chapter 3 Season 4. Now, I think this season overall, when it came to like loot pool wise, I think it was somewhat better compared to what we saw. Compared to what we saw in Chapter 2, Season 8. The only thing though that they did opposite was the Halloween event and the finale event. I can't say that those were good compared to Chapter 2 Season 8. But what the season did have, it did have a pretty good loophole, I would say. But the thing I didn't like either was the map. The map was another lazy thing that they did as well. That was probably the biggest, laziest thing that they did. I mean, I did love the fact that a lot of OG guns did return during the season. But the reason why I say the map was lazy was because all they were just doing is putting cum stains all over Tilted Towers, and that was pretty much it. That's all they did during that season. And of course, the Fracture event, which turned out to be one of the worst and the most boring live event in Fortnite's history. This season honestly could have been a B tier, but it wasn't, unfortunately. Alright, so now that's the end of Chapter 3. Now let's go on to Chapter 4. This is going to be interesting. Alright, so let's start off with Chapter 4, Season 1. Now, I think this Season 2, I think it was a good start to a new chapter. The base was once again fired up like they always were. Like, I actually thought the Battle Pass was somewhat decent. I didn't think it was perfect. The map, I thought, was phenomenal. The map was enjoyable. The loot pool was somewhat decent. I don't think it was the most perfect loot pool, but I think one thing that fired up a lot of people was that they brought back the Scar for the first time since Chapter 2. I did like that, but I did not like what they did to the Scar. They kind of messed it up during the season. And another thing, too, that I did not like what they did during that season was they added in a bunch of pointless changes on the final weeks of the season. Like, they took out the heavy sniper, which it would eventually get replaced later on in Chapter 4, Season 2. But I just did not like that. It was completely unnecessary and pointless. And on top of that, they got rid of the Deagle and all the other weapons that they put in later in the season as well. I mean, overall, it was mid, but my opinion kind of changed a little bit, and I decided to bump it up to B. Because at least it wasn't as bad as Chapter 5, Season 1, which we're going to talk about in a bit as well. So now, Chapter 4, Season 2. I actually like this season a lot more than Chapter 4, Season 1. And one of the reasons why, I really liked the loophole. I also loved the map as well. They did a huge significant change to the map as well. They didn't just change like one location. They changed an entire section of the map into like a futuristic Japanese style map. Now, the only things I really did not like about most of Chapter 4 so far was that every collab that they added, they put in overpowered mythics. But at least it wasn't as bad in these two seasons as it would be in Chapter 4 Season 3. Like, I really loved this season. Like, this was probably the most fun I had with this game in a long time. In fact, I actually streamed a lot more during this season than I did in any other season. Very fun, very memorable. And the gameplay, the loophole was phenomenal. I actually had a lot of fun with it. Arguably so, it was probably the best season in Chapter 4 until we get to OG. Now, Chapter 4, Season 3. Oh boy, I did not think I would ever meet this season again. This season is going F tier. Yep, a lot of you called it. Arguably so. I still think this is one of the, not even the top 3 worst seasons of all time, but top 2 worst seasons of all time. In fact, I even put it behind Chapter 3, Season 3. Mainly because of what I said earlier. The summer event during this was an absolute disgrace. I mean, all they did, instead of like having a stage area or having like a bunch of water activities in the middle of the map like we saw in Chapter 3, Season 3 to like get you hyped up for summer. You didn't see anything like that in Chapter 4, Season 3. All you saw was a tiny little square in the middle of the jungle with giant spray paints of Meowscles and Peely. The loot pool overall sucked. The third partying in this season was fucking insane. I did talk about that in my last tier ranking video with Chapter 4, Season 2, but this season was absolutely insane. It was like playing a Vietnam War simulator. And of course, the overpowered mythic weapons that came with the collabs as well. Like you had Optimus Prime being one of the main faces of the season. Then you had Futurama. Like then they started collab spamming again during the season because they started to get extremely desperate because people were getting pissed off, they were getting burnt out. But the burnout of Fortnite would not go away because then we would go on to Chapter 4, Season 4. Now, I can definitely say the season was a significant improvement to Chapter 4, Season 3, but not that much. And I'm going to put that in C tier as well. And one of the reasons why that is, well, the season had a good start, but the issue was it was kind of Fortnite's fault, but at the same time it wasn't because a lot of like really bad things did happen during the season, both inside Fortnite and outside Fortnite. You had Donald Mustard leave Epic Games. He stepped down from his position as chief creative officer at Epic Games, the mastermind of the Fortnite storyline. He was supposed to depart in October 1st, but he kind of overstayed his welcome a little bit because there were a lot of controversies that happened shortly before his scheduled departure. Epic Games was trying to raise the price of V-Bucks, which that pissed off the community a lot. And it was honestly, it was like the most angriest the Fortnite community had been in a while. When you talk about raising the price of V-Bucks, and then you had hundreds of employees get laid off during that time as well. And another thing, too, that I also didn't talk about was that the map, the locations, like the new locations where you had like all the boss locations, like this season was kind of like a Chapter 2, Season 2 bootleg, but they kind of failed it. The only thing that they improved in this season compared to Chapter 2, Season 2 was that in the boss locations, the weapons actually changed. They were not the same each time you landed at those locations. They were different. Like that was the only part that was good. But eventually the season just got really, really boring and a lot of people were pissed. And because of the anger that a lot of the Fortnite community had, this is where we get OG Fortnite. Now, a lot of people still debate whether if the OG season came back, whether if it was to like distract everybody from those controversies or not. Whatever they were trying to do or planning to do, it worked. It brought people back to the game. 100 million players logged into the game during that season, and that was the highest player count they had since 2020. I actually putting it in A tier. This was probably the most fun I had with the game since Chapter 4 Season 2 because it's OG, the first battle pass that did not have a collab skin, which I think that part was great. Like Fortnite can still make good battle passes without collabs. They still have creativity. But the reason why I'm putting it in A and not an S was because the Chapter 2 weapons, or no. The OG weapons that were in the season were Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 versions. And another thing too was they also like you know how I mentioned how Fortnite can like fire up its base and get people so hyped and excited for a new season? Well, the one thing that they always do is always mess it up somehow. And that's what they did when they tried to censor skins, which that also pissed off the community. But then Fortnite began to find a new strength that would replace the strong storyline strength that they had and making good LTMs. And that was communicating with the player base and trying to make things better because 2 days after they tried doing that, they canceled that idea. The season was fun. I had a lot of fun with the season. And a lot of my friends who I used to play with in the OG days all came back and we had the same amount of fun as we did during the OG days. And I definitely look forward to seeing OG Fortnite return once again. But now let's go on to Chapter 5. Season 1. I think many of you know where I'm going to put this. F tier, just kidding. I'm actually going to put it in D tier. Now, honestly, I think this season was very, very overhyped. Like, when I saw the leaks and everything, I kind of knew that this season was not going to be good. People were just overhyped, and the only reason why people were was mainly because Peter Griffin. I mean, he's been rumored to be put into Fortnite since 2021. Well, it looks like He finally came in the game in late 2023. But even Peter Griffin couldn't save this season because eventually it would get really, really boring. People would get extremely burnt out. People complained. I mean, the Winterfest itself was a complete and total joke. Winterfest sucked. And of course, you had little to no content. You had nothing but collab spams during that whole season, like the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collab. Fortnite has just been having a bad habit with spamming collabs and forcing their mythic weapons into the game. Now, I thought the map was good at first, but coming to reality, half the map locations literally feel the same. Like the layout, the textures, half of them feel the same. I mean, I do like that they put vaults in it. But here's another thing too I don't like is the weapon customizations because it just makes Fortnite kind of lose its identity a little bit because it instead of being a popular battle royale game, it's like they're like a Battlefield Call of Duty wannabe. And 45 days of no major update, all we have is a cardboard box from Metal Gear Solid. Overall, the season's shit. But I'm not going to go much more deeper into it because I don't want to spoil my final rant video I'm going to make on this season. That's coming soon, by the way. Stay tuned. But anyways, I'm going to wrap the video up here. I apologize for it being a long video. Comment thumbs up if you watch this video to the end. Because this is definitely the longest video I've ever made on this channel. But anyways, what do you guys think of this tier list? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button down below, subscribe, share this with your friends, and hit that bell for notifications so you'll never miss another video. And of course, follow me on Twitter, my awesome Twitter account. But anyways, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I'm going to get out of here now. So anyways, I will see you all in the next video. And this is ThunderBuddy29, sign off.